It's hard to ignore the feeling these days, isn't it? That the worlds of tech, business, they're just constantly shifting,
Uh-huh.
throwing curveballs, seemingly contradictory stuff at us every week.
Yeah, absolutely. One minute you read about regulators going after the big tech companies,
Right. Apple, Meta, Google,
and then next, they're posting these massive earnings.
exactly. And then there's the whole AI revolution. Is it like this amazing new dawn or something else entirely?
It's definitely a lot. It can feel overwhelming trying to figure out where things are actually heading.
Yeah, like navigating a maze sort of in the dark.
That's a good way to put it. We're in this period where the old rules are being challenged, and just the sheer amount of information, often pulling in opposite
Yeah.
directions, it makes it tough to see clearly.
Totally. And that's why this week we wanted to really dig into this piece from Keith Tears, That Was the Week,
Ah, yes.
because he doesn't just describe the chaos, he offers a really proactive way to think about it.
That's right. It's less about just watching it all happen and more about taking an active role.
He's arguing for engagement, right? Not just observation.
Exactly. Tira's core idea isn't about being a passive victim of all these changes.
Uh-huh.
It's about, actively picturing the future you actually want and then working to make that happen.
So rejecting the idea that we're just swept along by these big forces.
Precisely. He's saying, fundamentally, that we have agency. The future isn't just some fixed thing out there.
Okay. So our mission today is to really unpack that framework, see how it helps make sense of some of the big news this week.
And maybe figure out how we can apply his ideas ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start with those conflicting signals we mentioned.
Okay.
We saw, pretty big regulatory moves, Apple facing heat over the App Store stuff,
Right, the anti-steering rules, even a potential criminal referral mentioned.
and Meta dealing with more competition around their Llama API.
Uh-huh. And Google's still in that antitrust fight. Pichai even warned that, a breakup could actually hurt their AI progress.
Okay, so let's pause there. On one side, you've got these powerful regulators stepping in, trying to maybe level the playing field or curb power.
Seems like it.
But then, simultaneously, you see just massive investment pouring into AI, like xAI raising huge amounts.
Right. And just generally, software startups, especially AI ones, still getting really strong valuations across the board.
It's almost like the market and the regulators are, I don't know, living in different universes sometimes.
Well, and this is where Tier's perspective is so interesting.
How so?
Because these contradictions, they actually highlight his point that the answer to what's really happening is almost never simple.
It depends.
Exactly. It depends on choices.
Yeah.
Decisions being made by everyone involved, regulators, investors, the companies themselves. The regulations reflect one set of decisions about market fairness, maybe.
And the huge AI investments, that feels like a very clear decision by investors.
Yeah, a big bet on AI's transformative power. It suggests a belief that, okay, maybe some giants face headwinds, but the next wave is coming, and it's huge.
Makes sense.
But Tier's framework pushes us further than just noticing the contradiction.
Right. He wants us to.
To think about deciding on an outcome and then engaging with the world to make the outcome you desire more likely.
So, faced with regulations here and investment booms there, the real question is, what kind of tech world do we want as users, builders, investors?
Exactly. It shifts the focus from passive analysis to active participation in shaping what comes next.
That's a powerful shift. Okay, so let's talk more about those future-shaping technologies. AI is obviously like the main event right now.
For sure. And the progress is just relentless. Meta's Llama API got way faster. We're seeing more and more companies actually using what people are calling agentic AI.
Right. Maybe explain that quickly for folks.
Sure. Agentic AI basically means AI that can act on its own, more autonomously, to achieve goals you set for it. It's not just responding, it's doing.
Got it. And then there's even talk about AI companions, right?
Yeah, that whole area is growing too. And all these developments, they really line up with what Tier explicitly says he hopes for.
Which is?
He talks about a future where humans are increasingly augmented by software and robotics.
Leading to less labor time.
That's the idea. And better AI delivering better products and services. More abundance, essentially.
Okay, and the Sastra example you mentioned earlier, that really brought it home for me.
Oh, yeah.
Their AI handled, what was it, almost 140,000 customer interactions in a month, and did it well.
Yep. That's not just tweaking things. That's a fundamental change in how a business can operate.
Totally changes the scale.
And think about that idea of semantic cultivators that Tom Tunga's brought up.
Right, explain that one too.
As AI agents start processing just enormous amounts of data, we'll need people who are skilled at making sure the AI actually understands the context, the nuance.
Ah, so guiding the interpretation, like
No.
AI librarians or sense makers.
Kind of bridging the gap between raw data and, well, something closer to human understanding. And that fits right into Tira's desire for AI to get smarter and more useful.
So a new kind of job, essentially, focused on refining AI's grasp of the world.
Seems likely. And then you have things like Sam Altman's WorldCoin project.
With the eyeball scanning, the identity verification.
Right. Trying to create a reliable way to prove you're human, not an AI agent.
Mhm.
Which feels like a pretty direct response to a world where that distinction is becoming increasingly blurry and important.
Yeah, you can see the need for that, potentially.
And even the debate about whether the web browser could become the new OS for AI agents.
How so?
Well, if AI agents need to interact with tons of different websites and services, having a central platform like a browser could make things way more efficient. It just shows how deep these potential changes go.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. What about the role of government in all this? Tura has a pretty specific view there.
He does. He basically argues for government to get out of the way,
Mostly.
mostly, except when it's, building shared infrastructure or protecting everyone, so a more limited role.
Right, and it's interesting to put that alongside, say, the review of Ezra Klein's book, Abundance.
Ah, yes, the Albert Wenger review.
What was the main point there?
Wenger's critique was essentially that Klein's vision, while aiming for abundance, wasn't radical enough. It kind of shied away from the truly disruptive changes needed to get there democratically.
Okay, and how does that connect back to terror?
Well, Wenger uses language very similar to Terra's. He talks about needing people doing things consciously, and he criticizes a lack of courage for actual reinvention.
So both seem to be calling for a bolder, more deliberate approach, not just small tweaks.
Exactly. Both are pushing for active, conscious shaping of the future, not just hoping things work out.
Okay. Now, contrast that with something like the Take It Down Act passing Congress recently.
Right, which some people see as definite government overreach, a potential threat to free speech online.
So that's a very different model of government involvement than terror seems to want.
Absolutely. On one hand, you have the argument for minimal interference to let innovation flourish. On the other, government actively stepping in to regulate content.
It definitely highlights a real tension, doesn't it, about how we collectively decide what role government plays in shaping this future.
It really does. It's a fundamental question about that balance between oversight and individual or corporate action.
Okay, let's pivot again. Venture capital. How does Tier's idea of actively shaping a desired future show up in the VC world? We saw Figure AI, the robotics company, trying to manage its secondary stock sales.
Yeah, that's a great example. Figure AI's actions, trying to control who trades their shares and at what price before they're public. You can definitely see that through Tier's lens of making the future according to a plan. They clearly have a desired path for their valuation, future funding, and they're taking active steps to steer things that way.
Trying to control the narrative and the numbers.
Pretty much. It shows how companies and their investors aren't just passive. They're trying to actively manage their trajectory.
And we're also seeing SPACs making a comeback, apparently.
Yeah, a bit of a resurgence there.
Just remind us what a SPAC is.
Sure. Special Purpose Acquisition Company. It's basically a blank check company that raises money through an IPO, then goes out and finds a private company to merge with, taking it public that way.
So another route to the public markets.
Exactly. The renewed interest suggests companies are looking for different options, maybe faster ones than a traditional IPO. Those SPACs have their own, complexities and risks.
Just another example of people making conscious choices about financing and growth.
Right. And we also heard some interesting takes on VC strategy itself, like Tavet Henriquez from Plural.
What was his point?
He was cautioning about these huge multi-stage VC funds jumping into very early seed rounds.
Why is that potentially bad?
His argument was it can inflate valuations too early, maybe create misaligned incentives between founders and these giant funds who might have different priorities later on.
So it matters who you take money from, especially early on.
Absolutely. It aligns with Tira's focus on deliberate action. Founders need to think hard about who they partner with and the long-term game plan.
And then you look at a firm like Benchmark.
Yeah, their track record in Series A finding companies that become worth $5 billion plus.
It's pretty
It
amazing.
really underscores the impact of that focused, early-stage support and conviction. It's investors actively helping build those successful outcomes.
So the whole VC world is really a theater of people making active bets on the futures they believe in.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, briefly on geopolitics. J.D. Vance gave a keynote, right, about U.S. manufacturing.
Yeah, arguing for bringing manufacturing back, reestablishing U.S. leadership.
How does that connect to TER?
Well, TER expressed a desire to avoid, national elites fighting wars over resources or abundance. Strengthening domestic production could be seen as one way to achieve more national security and economic stability without relying so heavily on potentially unstable global supply chains.
A proactive step towards self-reliance, maybe?
That seems to be the argument. A strategic decision to shape a more secure economic future for the U.S.
And there was also mention of discussions happening in, let's say, influential circles about China.
Right, indicating that people are actively analyzing, interpreting, and trying to figure out how to navigate these complex global power shifts.
Forming strategies, alliances.
Conscious efforts to understand and potentially influence the bigger international picture.
Okay, final big theme. The value of humans in an increasingly AI-driven world. There was that essay, Humans as Luxury Goods.
Yeah, that one definitely makes you think. It echoes some ideas from Seiji Paul Chattery, the tier he has mentioned before,
What's the core idea?
that as automation takes over more and more tasks, actual human interaction, human skill, human connection might become a premium luxury good.
So the things AI can't easily replicate become more valuable.
Potentially. Things like deep creativity, complex problem solving, empathy, nuanced communication, those uniquely human skills could be in higher demand.
But then kind of flipping that, you have the rise of AI friends.
Right, the idea that AI companions could actually help with things like loneliness.
It's a fascinating contrast, isn't it?
It really is. We often emphasize the irreplaceable value of human connection. But if AI can provide some form of companionship or support, especially for people who are isolated, it raises big questions about connection and well-being in the future.
So maybe the overall trend is humans moving towards more strategic, complex, creative work.
Well, AI handles more of the routine, operational, tactical stuff.
And hopefully that aligns with TIR's hope for abundance, lifting everyone up.
That's the optimistic view, yes. That AI frees up human potential for higher-level contributions rather than just displacing jobs.
Allowing people to focus on things that drive innovation and maybe personal fulfillment.
That's the goal, I think.
And one last quick point, the piece on storytelling matters.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that even in super technical fields, being able to communicate clearly, effectively, it's still crucial.
Absolutely. Persuading people, explaining complex ideas, simply that remains a vital human skill.
Which actually is kind of what TER himself is doing in his editorial, right?
That's a great point. He's telling a story, laying out his perspective, trying to persuade us to see things his way and act on it.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. As we bring this deep dive to a close, what's the main takeaway from TIR's editorial, especially looking through the lens of this week's news?
I think the key thing, the most important point, is really about agency.
Taking control.
Yeah. TIR is pushing us, urging us to move beyond just reacting to all the crazy, confusing changes happening.
Don't just be observers.
Exactly. He wants a proactive stance. Consciously define the future you want, and then actively work to make it happen. It's a call for, engaged participation.
And just understanding that core idea, that call to participate, feels like a really valuable tool, doesn't it, for making sense of all the headlines?
It really does. It helps you analyze things not just based on what is happening right now, but also what could happen and maybe what we collectively want to make happen.
It gives you a filter, almost.
Precisely. If you have a clearer vision of a desired future, you're in a better position to judge the importance of a new regulation or a big investment or a tech breakthrough. It's like a compass for navigating these times.
Okay, so here's a final thought then. For you, the listener, building right on TIR's challenge, what kind of future do you actively want to help create? And maybe more concretely, what steps, even small ones, can you take starting today? In your own work, your community, even just in how you think about these big trends.
Right.
What can you do to move towards that future you want?
It's definitely worth reflecting on how all this connects to your own life.
Yeah. And if any specific topic we talked about today really grabbed you,
Dig deeper. Go read Tier's editorial yourself. Check out some of the articles we mentioned.
the more informed you are.
The better equipped you are to actually engage and potentially help shape what comes next.